Mihinkä sä nyt menit? Ei kun sinulle. Niin, ala tulla täältä. Ja se se on niinku nytkin, että saa siihen. Niin, kun tää on tarkoitettu ulos. Joo.
Okay, let's see. Hi, everybody, and we're having a little change in schedule, as you know, um, and we'll be doing the work on Andromeda, which is well, it's not really it's a constellation, and yet it's a galaxy. It represents the soul, so that's later. And we're going to switch around now to take our first look at the second initiation. I just want to say that the purpose of the Blue Rose Sisterhood is to build a chalice for the Christ consciousness. Okay, and we know that even the causal body may not have that Christ consciousness yet. In other words, it's something that builds up over time. So when we look at average humanity, and let's just say average non-aspiring humanity, the humanity that still thinks that it is the personality, we have a long way to go to build that chalice, which the chalice in a way is the causal body, the egoic lotus, and empty that chalice through soul infusion into the personality. This is the purpose that we in the Blue Rose Sisterhood, whether and the Shiva brothers, it has that kind of quality of ancient India that comes along with the Tibetans' teaching. That we have to find a way to really become soul infused. Now, if we do become soul infused, then we are expressing something that's really very rare and very beautiful when it is expressed. It's the Christ consciousness, the mind that is in Christ. Especially as we begin to talk about the second initiation, that gets relevant. Of course, you have the birth of the heart, a birth of the Christ within the heart at the first degree, however many incarnations it may take to reach the second, but then there is a real regeneration of the astral body at the second initiation. It has some wonderful planets associated with it. You would know what they are: Venus, Jupiter, Neptune. So beneath the surface, Mars and Pluto are fighting it out, but finally the condition of the astral body is really more responsive to the Christ energy at the when Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune finally do their higher work. The funny thing in the secret doctrine is you usually think of these wonderful planets, Venus and Jupiter, as if they are, just friends. but in the secret doctrine, they have a battle. And I think it's, if I'm correct, it's between Brihaspati, which is Jupiter, and Narada, which stands for the angels in Sanat Kumara. And Jupiter does have a lower side, and it wants to anchor you in matter because it's exalted in the sign Cancer, which is very, very old. And Venus is trying to abstract us so that we're no longer throwing our energy into matter. But anyway, the three of them together really recondition the they really recondition the astral body, and you begin to really recognize the expression of some lovely quality in the astral body that is only being worked upon before that point. In other words, we've got to get rid of a lot of glamour between the first and second. I won't say all glamour, but I want to say a lot before the first and second degree, and then we will be more free to express this love petal energy, the synthesis love petal energy, and the Buddhic energy. All of these are Even the monadic energy has a mixture of ray 1 and ray 2 because it's on the second subplane. So, the purpose of the Blue Rose Sisterhood and learning all of these technical things about initiation is to somehow find a way to bring the Christ consciousness into expression in our lives and in the lives of others, maybe sooner than would be the case, because it's very important now. You see which way the world is trending. You see so many glamours. You see such wild beliefs. People think reality is this or that, You go to heaven forever and that's it, just as long as you say, yes, I believe. I mean, this is childish stuff. I mean, believing is important, of course, but this is childish. And we want to offer a science along with the Christ consciousness. So it's the science of how to bring the Christ consciousness into expression, and there's a lot of beauty in it, and it has to do with building up the causal body. Now, the causal body is going to be filled with qualities, like, let's see if I can remember this. There are here, you do a little math with me, okay? We add the number 9 to the number 12 to the number 15. What do we have? Is it 35 or is it 36? Okay, well, let's see. 9 and 12 are 21, and 15, 36. Okay, 36 different colors in the causal body, and 9 different petals, 36 colors, and each one of those colors is a tone and represents some kind of ability that can be expressed in the chalice. That's what they call it in Agni Yoga, the chalice, okay? So, and that's not even the end, because we have the 3 synthesis petals and the jewel in the lotus. Now let's add that together, we get 40. But the jewel in the lotus has got, what does it have? It has 7 facets, 1 for each ray. And we get 47, really, if we want to look at it that way. Then sum up the whole thing, and we get 48, which is the number right before 49, which is 7 sevens, where you have to complete everything. So, there's a lot of the third ray in the egoic lotus. In other words, it's a vehicle. Okay, let's see if we can. What do I know here? I'm just struggling here to try to use a different system. Oh, let's see if this is all Tuya's good stuff here, but okay, I'm not getting my egoic lotus the way I want to. It is somewhere, okay? But let's just look at it that way. How many numbers are there involved here? So 4 and 8 is 12 is 3, okay? And that the vehicle, the egoic lotus, which we associate with the Christ consciousness, is still in the dense physical body of the solar logos. So it's connected with the third aspect of divinity. Now you go up a little bit and you have the spiritual triad, which is the expression of the monad, and it is the true ego. It is the true soul. It really carries the second aspect of divinity as, Atma Buddhi Manas. That's the real ego, which is invested in the causal body. But when the causal body disappears, what do you have? Basically, you have the second aspect. Now you go a little higher, and then the first aspect, which is the monadic aspect, it's found on the monadic plane. So you've got 1, 2, 3. So you can count up in the egoic lotus lots of different ways. 9 petals, 36 different colors, and notice 3 and 6 is how much? 9. What is the number 9? We just talked about it yesterday. It's the feminine. It is the number associated with the third ray. And the excuse me. The third ray is very much connected with the female aspect of divinity. Kether, Chokhmah, and Bina. It's the third ray. So the 9 is the number of the third ray, and all the third ray cycles are 9s. 9, 90, 900, 9,000, and so forth. So there's a very significant 9 in this causal body, and then there's a 12, and the 12 is 3 again. Then there's a 48, and the 48 is 3 again. It's a 12, it's a 3. So we're dealing with a vessel. We're dealing with the receptive aspect, the third aspect. Then we go to the spiritual triad, which represents the true second aspect, and then we go to the monad, which represents the true first aspect. And our job is to get these energies down into the chalice, and from there the Buddhic energy into the chalice, filling our personality with the Christ consciousness, so we can make a transition from being third aspect people who are just living in the personality, as so many do, with the wheel going clockwise, as it were, to second aspect people who are responding to the soul. So the blue rose, of course, the blue, we have a blue logos, indigo logos maybe. Anyway, we have a wonderful second ray solar system, and we have the blue rose. The rose is the symbol of the Christ consciousness. Blue is the symbol of the second or Christ aspect of divinity. Our job is to cultivate that. Master Moria says that women particularly are bringing in the new age, particularly, and it really fits when you look at who's done it, Bailey, Blavatsky, Rurik, and so forth, bringing in the new age. And we want to help educate women to their spiritual potentials. And, like Tuyi was saying the other day, a lot of classical esotericism puts women down somehow because they're associated with Atlantis, and now here's the Aryan age, this is the masculine age, but neither one of them will do. It has to be a balance coming in the 6th root race. But in order for that to happen, the spiritual women in the world really have to rise up, and they will make the difference. What we're going to see a little later is that Andromeda is the soul. And when you look at 2 galaxies that just have billions of stars, okay? We have the Andromeda galaxy and our Milky Way galaxy. And, Milky Way sounds feminine, but it's not. It is the personality galaxy compared to the soul galaxy of Andromeda. So always Venus has to rise. Venus is the energy which will win the battle over Mars. Mars rules every aspect of the personality except maybe the etheric body, and it rules the whole personality itself. And Venus must become the victor of this battle, which is ongoing now. And there's a lot of Martian monads on our planet. Shoo. But anyway, they're needed. And that's the problem. They act according to their nature, which is war and battle and strife. And now Venus has to overcome that. Dear, looks like you wanted to say something.
Color blue. Mary, one of the names of the Mary is mystical rose. So in that sense, the rose in here in the West is similar like the lotus in the East. And also the rose is related to the secrets of Christ life. In the early Christianity, when the Christians were hunted, the rose was one of the secret symbols which was left here and there. But it has had a deeper meaning that the rose has been sealing some mysteries of Christ or Jesus and Mary Magdalene. So you see the rose which is drawn in the church paintings and iconography. You see this 5-petaled rose. So we know that these petals are formed also in the sky when we count this relationship with the sun, the earth, and the Venus. So it is dancing this kind of patterns which is forming 5-petaled rose. So and then in the symbolism of pentagram about the 5th ray and about the perfected man. So whenever we have the rose, it is the symbolism of all of these mysteries. And for us, the color, the blue, it could be indigo rose. We visualize that as indigo color and the flavors of blue, because the blue in this system is hiding the secrets of the redeeming secrets, how the soul is redeeming the lower self from the matter. So a mystical rose, as Mary is called, I want to call our level now mystery rose. Mystical is related, as you know, to the 6th ray and this the time what we are and we should have been passing. Now we are entering into the mysteries of the work, mysteries of the soul, how we are, all of us. We have to break through the doors into the real point of the 4th decree, whenever it is there in the future. The 4th decree, when we have solved the problems in these incarnations, earthly incarnations. But then we move into the life of the soul in the inner planes, on the Buddhic plane, and then on the Atmic plane, and become masters. So the mystery rose is sealing all these secrets. And as we were pointing out, that it is so important now that the women will understand their duty. So often we are used to that it's the man who is telling us what to do. But that time has to be over. It's not only so that the men are having the power over women. It's also that the women has to grow in the strength of the spiritual will and take that stand as spiritual people, spiritual beings on earth. Not only all the time waiting, because there is a tricky thing in that, and that is about the mystery, how the one becomes the living soul on earth, how we really, really understand this is my responsibility. How do we really, really do it so that we know whatever the others are saying? And that is the point that you must have, all of us must have, and always when the soul starts to work, there has to come the counterforce. The counterforce will test us. These tests are going to go through in every single sign, but there are particular signs where this is most potent, and maybe it would be interesting to see that are these signs going to be 5, if we think there is a struggle in everyone. But the big struggles are in Scorpio, in Capricorn, in Pisces. Well, Leo is one of those.
And just the number 5 itself, you know.
Yeah, but I was just thinking, are there 5 particular signs that we really see where is the? I counted 4, where really the struggle is very
you got
potent.
Scorpio, don't you?
I had Scorpio, Capricorn, Pisces, Leo.
No, well, every
Everyone,
every
but
sign.
also if we think about Gemini.
Well, Libra. Libra is very important for the balancing of male and female now.
Yeah, we will find everything, but I was thinking about the real fights. Well, anyway, you can contemplate yourself. But this mystery, for us, let us call that mystery rose. Nowadays, that Mary is mystery rose, not only mystical rose. And this blue is the one which is revealing the whole secrets of this program in this solar system. So blue is the color of synthesis at the moment, and is the most revealing soul color in its all kinds of shades. Blue.
Master Moria is the one who is particularly behind the advancing of women in the New Age, because he says they are bringing in the New Age. So just the way, now, who is that Pakistani young woman who was shot?
Oh, Malala.
Malala? Something like that, or? But she's so much for women's education.
Yes.
And so are we, but it's also the esoteric education of women, so that they can take their true soul position, balancing all of this old false hierarchy. Now you say, why are there so many men who are masters? It has a lot to do with simply the electricity of the body you're using. It's just a technical matter. So it's not like some kind of preferential thing. We've all had female bodies, we've all had male bodies, and sometimes the electricity is what it is. But the 6 ray types, emphasizing Mars, are really staying with the old view that, as a matter of fact, I just read it the other day, God created men superior to women. Okay, well, who said that?
Really?
Who said that? Was it Muhammad? Who said that? Or is it something that is... and then many religions act like that. And yet at the same time they have the cult of Mary and all the other things in the Catholic Church. So it's a little bit schizophrenic. And we need to bring a better balance into the situation. And I think that's why sometimes when I think about the Blue Rose Sisterhood, I think that Master Moria has a ray into that, some kind of inspirational ray, because that's the way he is, And so we intend to move forward with practical educational methods, and also with esoteric methods, and try to restore the balance. I mean, look, we're both male and female, and the soul is the divine hermaphrodite, Hermes and Aphrodite. The soul is all of that, and we are all of that. But it's not right, fair, or wise that half the population of the world, and maybe more, is relegated to a secondary position. It's like, cutting off your one foot and expecting to run a race. It's ridiculous. So anyway, the Blue Rose Sisterhood has this very strong function, and it's very, syncretistic or synthetic, It takes in Buddhism, esotericism, Hinduism, the Tao, esoteric Christianity.
Egypt mysteries.
What, dear?
Egypt mysteries.
Which mysteries are those?
Egypt?
Oh, Egypt. Oh, let's not forget about it. I think I had a rough time in Egypt long ago. I'm trying to forget it. It's like, why I won't go back to Spain. Anyway, yes, but the Egyptian mysteries. All those things that Blavatsky wrote about are somehow part of our Blue Rose program, in addition to the very clear occultism of Master DK, which is scientific in nature and needs to be present to explain many other things that are expressed in language which is more poetic and symbolic. So that's just a reminder. And when we get into the, let's see what happens here. When we get into the second initiation, we have to remember that, because that's really when the love-wisdom energy starts to come through the astral body. First it's light, the knowledge petals of the egoic lotus. Then it's love, which are the love petals of the egoic lotus. And then it is sacrifice, sacrificial will, the mental petals, and so forth. So we need to relate these things. Now, yesterday what we did, we looked at our charts and so forth, and we said, if I were taking the first initiation, what would this chart mean? Now, today, a little later, we're going to be looking and say, if I were taking the second initiation, how could I use the energies of this chart? And maybe we'll do that with the third initiation too. It's just to realize that all of these energies are available to be applied in different contexts. So no chart is good or bad. You can use whatever you've got. Some charts are more difficult than others, but maybe difficulty is good. So now let's just say a little bit, what have we got? 40 pages here of compilation, and it's not even complete. So we'll start by talking a little bit about the second initiation, the baptism in the River Jordan. What are the inner rivers which are involved in this initiation? We remember Aquarius, right? And how Hercules took the Alpheus and the Peneus River, sounds very much like two streams of Kundalini energy, and he cleaned out the stables of King Alpheus that were piled high for 30 years with all of the dung from the animals, no cleanliness whatsoever. So along comes the healing energy of Aquarius. And the old saying, cleanliness is next to godliness. So we're going to experience divinity in a new way in the Aquarian age, and a lot of baptisms are going to take place. And by baptisms, I don't mean just the literal kind of hold your nose and go underwater kind of thing, but the real baptism by water and baptism by fire. As you know, we've been talking also about the Pentecost, right, dear? And how those disciples in the upper room, no less, they went up into the upper room, talk about symbolism, and Christ told them to do that and wait there, and the Holy Spirit will come. And he did. He came in fire. So that's going to happen a lot in the Aquarian age, baptism by fire. The first initiation will be taught outwardly and shown outwardly to those to whom it applies. I don't think it'll be a public event like a football game, but it'll be something that appropriate people can attend. And then there's the second initiation, which will maybe be a little more recessed, a little drawn back, and maybe it will take place more on the astral plane than on the physical plane. But anyway, both initiations will be offered, we might say, publicly, which has never been the case before. In this seventh time, in the Aryan age, that Aquarius and the seventh ray are joining together. Seventh time now that the seventh ray cycle and the Aquarian precessional cycle are joining together. Now we don't know whether that means the huge age of Aquarius, which is 25,000 years, or the more modest age of Aquarius, which is 2,500 years. Well, anyway, a few interesting things here. After the second degree, and there's a lot of speed here. After the second degree, you know how it is. You go to the airport, you're carrying some heavy bags or whatever, and you get on the people mover. And it's that, it's that kind of escalator that's flat, right? And you go fast, and everybody else is huffing and puffing, and you're just walking along, and you're going fast. So that's what the stream is like for the second degree. There's kind of like a, it's an in-gathering breath rushing you towards the ashram, and you go with the current, okay? And that means that you start facing the monad after the second initiation. And why would that be the case? Let's take a look here. Now, notice that the second initiation is ruled by the sixth ray, and it's involving the astral plane, and the monad its number is 6 because its number is 24, and it's 2 from the top and 6 from the bottom, and the astral plane is 2 from the bottom and 6 from the top. So it is not an unusual thing. It makes sense that we really turn towards the monad after the second degree or around that time. We're facing Sanat Kumara. What is this, Sanat Kumara? We are also learning about being. We're learning about oneness. We're learning about identification. Now, we've been emphasizing that a lot, and DK kind of talks about it here and there. I am that, and that am I. I am that I am. Identification. We start to learn about that after the second degree, because that's a monadic subject. So you know, before you arrive at a destination, maybe you see the destination in the distance. That's what's going on here with the second degree. So it's quite a... There was... Master DK sort of feared, that the man he was talking to about the fact that he wasn't taking the fourth degree would just quit the group. And he did. He quit the group. But Master DK said to him, look, you're taking the second degree. So you see, we rate you highly. Okay, you know, a big gap between the first and second degree, and then once you're in that vortex, or, you know, it's like, suppose your river is going along, it's flowing nicely, and then ahead of you is a canyon with very high walls, and it narrows down. The speed of the river is going to increase dramatically as it goes through that canyon, and that's like the second degree, and then maybe it ushers out into the more peaceful revelation of mastership after you really go through it in the second, third, and fourth degree. Okay, so speed is going on, orientation to the monad, the reorientation of the soul towards the monad at the second degree. See, look, you know, in the Blue Rose Sisterhood, the soul is our objective. But we cannot forget the Father in heaven behind all that, and really the monad made the soul, if I can say that. The soul is a special case of the monad when the monad extends itself into a denser field of matter. So everything's the monad. The soul is the monad, the personality is the monad, it's all the monad, but in different types of appearances. So, you know, in the sisterhood, in the group, it'd be great if humanity could even get a handle on what is the soul other than it's going to go to hell or go to heaven. And it's like something else than we are. You know, it's so childish. It's such primitive thinking. But you know, these people have not been exposed to the esoteric worldview. And even if they were, maybe they're not ready, because the esoteric worldview has been around a long time. So if you're really interested, you can get into it. But a lot of people have not suffered enough to be really interested. It's the sad thing. The sad thing, you got to suffer quite a bit before you begin to wake up to the realities. Remember our happy little planet here, the planet of releasing sorrow and purifying pain. And, you know, so we've got it right here on Planet X. Okay. So anyway, we're reorienting towards the soul. We're taking the first two initiations. Shambhala's attention is towards us and speeding along the fact that we are taking these first two initiations. It's never been the case. Isolated here or there, a worthy individual here or there, but not groups. And we're told now we've got to take initiation in groups. We need initiated groups. Like, he says, in the next 500 years, various masters will present their groups to the initiator. And if we don't have the groups, we won't keep up with the time-space schedule of the planetary logos. So, can we become even a minimally initiated group? Can Moria Federation do that? Can Masonry do that? Can groups within the New World religion or interested in the new type of religion, can they do that? Can they have such a level of consciousness, a point of tension, that the master can say, this group is ready for the accolade of fire? Now DK, he hoped to do that. The war came along. A lot of people, they said, oh, I'm ready for this, and then they start working with the master, and it's just exhausting, because he's always got his eye on you, and you imagine the pressure of working with a member of the hierarchy constantly. You're always under the gun. So a lot of people failed and a few people succeeded, but the groups did not succeed per se. Okay? He says the Dina books will be a wonderful success, but it's not what he intended. They will lead many people into the ashram, great, but it's not what he intended. He wanted to produce groups that really held together and held the light, held the love, held the will. He wanted that. So try again. How long does the Seed Group project last? 275 years. Okay? Up to the year 2000 at 75, so 2200 is when we're going to be seeing the end of this Seed Group project. So hang in there. How many incarnations is that? You got another 180 years, and maybe you'll be back, probably. Things are so stressful right now that people are not going to kind of hang out in Devachan having a good time in a high form of illusion. They want to get back and help. Okay. So Shambhala is turned toward humanity, and at the second initiation, with all that Vulcan energy, that Mars energy, and remember the monad and the will, you find out a little more about what Shambhala is. Maybe it's too soon when we're just initiates of the first degree, but by the time we orient ourselves towards the will, towards the monad, towards identification, towards Sanat Kumara, we're finding out what is Shambhala a little bit. Now, some people waltz in the door of Shambhala every day, have a little conversation with Sanat. Maybe they learn what they should have for breakfast, I don't know. But it's a complete lack of proportion. People, they just don't know. And sure, why not contact, as a channel would contact, why not contact Sanat Kumara and forget that he's Lord of the world, underlying every possible thing on this globe. Anyway, we, in a nice kind of way, not too nice, have a lot of correcting of human thinking to deliver, if we can do it. And remember, if you want the hard job, always begin with your relatives. This will be a testing. Your sisters, your brothers, your parents, maybe sometimes even your children. Oh, Mom, you're always talking about that stuff, or whatever. I remember my oldest son, he's my oldest son, he's now 53. I can't believe it. Anyway, he used to, when he was in his early 20s or late teens, he would say, "My father, the philosopher." And he would say it with that tone of voice that you just wanted to wilt. This was his this was his estimation of what I was into. And now he's the one that studies the occultism the most, including the occultism of Egypt and all the rest of it. So I once went to a palmist, and I was kind of complaining. I said, look, no matter what I do, my son is just not interested in this stuff. I just can't make any headway. He said, you just wait. You just wait. So she saw something, you know. Anyway, start with your family members, and if you succeed there, you can succeed anywhere. Okay. I'm sorry for this cough, which is chronic and perpetual. Second initiation, well, you know, there are degrees in Masonry which kind of reflect initiations, and there's DK talks about them, you know, EA, Entered Apprentice, FC, Fellow Craft, he mentions them. It's not like one has to keep the secret as to what these names stand for, or MM, your Master Mason's degree, but the Fellow Craft is the second degree, FC, and it's all about brotherhood. It's all about group consciousness. It's all about the soul rising and expressing strongly on the second subplane of the mental plane, right here, second subplane. Now I know there's a delay in the picture showing up for you here and also for the people in the audience, but anyway, here is the FC, Brotherhood, Venus, Aquarius, and the last 720 years of the Aquarian age is going to be the age of Venus, the age of Brotherhood, the age of the FC, the age of the Fellow Craft, where we work and create together. Masonry is a marvelous allegory for building up the human being. And what are we all trying to do? Well, the Masons say, we are building King Solomon's temple. And Manly Hall would say, we are building the temple of Solar Man, Solomon, okay, Solar Man. So what is Solomon's temple? It's the egoic lotus. Yes, that's Solomon's temple. And the true builders along the, well, it's very Vulcan. You know, Vulcan has this hammer aspect where it can smash everything in sight, very destructive, or the hammer can be a very important constructive tool to drive in the metal that holds things together. So we are building King Solomon's temple, whether we are externally a Mason or not. Everybody is a Mason, and the way my old teacher used to describe it, he used to say, everybody is a mother's son, ma son, you know. He used to play with words, and a real initiate, in my estimation. I guess when you have 6 planets in Pisces and Leo rising, you got to do something about it. So this was an unusual man. And every one of us has to build King Solomon's temple until the temple is destroyed. But we're not there yet, are we? We still have a lot to do to correct our deficiencies. Let's just say it. Nothing bad is in the soul, but there's some blank spots in the egoic lotus, and we need to open those sacrifice petals more and more, which happen at the first 3 initiations. Okay, so anyway, there's a growing sense here at the second initiation. It really fits. Brotherhood is a monadic factor. In other words, it is wrong in time and space and relativity to say all men are born equal. But we can say that all monads are created equal. And that's a different thing. And that's where the real brotherhood comes from. Now, we're not at all equal in what we have accomplished with our life. Manly Hall said, you know, take a look at who you are, where you are, what you've done. You made it. This is your condition based upon your decisions of the past. And we're born in, some people are writing symphonies at the age of 4, and other people are very held back in their mental development for various reasons. So we're not equal in demonstration, but we are equal in essence. And the monad is essence. But this initiation, he says, will produce in the initiate a growing sense of relationships, as the second ray always does, of a basic unity with all that breathes, not just human beings, every kingdom, and a recognition of the one life. Well, that's a tall order, isn't it? We add we add to all the requirements of the first degree all this mental stuff, so we have spiritual intelligence and mental illumination, plus things of this nature, having to do with unity and relationship. So, high requirements, and that's why Master D.K. said to this man, ISGL, Eugene Cosgrove, he said, "Therefore you see, we rate you highly." There were a few in the Tibetans group who were taking the second initiation, and really just a few. So, sometimes we say, those initiations, that initiation. And I always say, well, subtract at least one from your best estimate, So things are more difficult, more demanding than we realize. And to reach the point where we see the basic unity of all life, and we're in unity with all that breathes, and we recognize the one life, hey, that's the beginning of something really big. That is the progress towards isolated unity, which is the characteristic of the master. So it really begins after the second degree. You enter the stream, the ashram is becoming real. More and more the soul is influencing, provided when you get out in the desert, you make the right decisions. Now you know what I mean, the temptations in the desert. The world, the flesh, and the devil. Now you're really powerful, and you might be able to have the world, the flesh, or the devil. And you have to reject them in favor, dear, it's okay, I have. Sorry, this bottoms up here. This is our wonderful Finnish water, well water, good water, except when it stays here for a couple of days. Nonetheless. All right. So anyway, this will eventually lead to that state of expressed brotherhood, which it is the goal of the Aquarian age to bring into being. And we can even begin now with our esoteric co-workers who sometimes seem to like to fight with each other for no good reason. We can bring in this state of brotherhood. And this is interesting here, we don't even have to wait for the age of Venus. Even in the age of Mercury, which is Buddhic and fourth ray, there's more love coming in the second decade. So, whoops.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Dear, did you want to, I'm just chattering on here. If you wanted to say something there. Okay, so second decade. Even in the age of Mercury, which is the second 740 years. By the way, lots of things about water rights are going to be decided in the first decade. If you want to get a good picture of a desert, just look at Saturn in Aquarius for the first 720 years. Who owns the water? How do we access the water? What does water mean to us? How do we make the desert bloom? All of those are big issues for the first 720 years of the age of Aquarius. I'm using a figure which is based upon the Hindu chronology where the number 432 is very important. And then you divide that in half, you get 216. Add a 0, 2160, a processional age. 2160, a smaller processional age. Okay, anyway, love is coming. We just have to get through this very difficult situation. We have here the hierarchy of souls under Mercury carrying messages. Master DK is a perfect example of that. He's called the messenger. And under this Mercury decanate, there'll be a lot of this, the necessary conversation between hierarchy and humanity. So these two planetary centers will be closer and closer related. And again, you know, Gemini and Virgo are very involved in this process. Both of them ruled by Mercury and having to do with the relationship of soul and personality and spirit, soul, and matter. We're in for a big integration during the age of Aquarius. Many diverse things. And you would say, I can't put those things together. But yes, you can. You can put many, many things together in a harmonious way. And that's what we're learning. Okay, now, I'm just, you know, like I say, we've done 2 pages out of 40. We're really rolling along here. And but I'd like, you know, this is available to you actually. If you go to YouTube, some commentary is available on these video commentary. There's about 30 programs up there, and I've gone into it in detail. So, okay, and you'll see on the screen, you can stop your screen and you will see the text, and maybe we can get it to you. Now, here we have the lead up to the baptism in the Jordan. There's got to be a purification. Purification by water, purification by fire. And I'll tell you what, it's not new. The Egyptians had it. It's not something that only Christians have. You know how every religion comes along and borrows from the previous one. And they even build their temple or their churches right where the other ones were built. See? So it's all a great continuity, with the new religion saying we're the best and we're the only. But that's just the narrowness of the concrete mind. So we have this period, we called it an inward and a suffering period of the first 30 years of the life of Jesus. And before we hit and take our public steps, a little bit at a time perhaps, but we let it be known who we are. We, you know, the sacral to the throat is doing its work. Through the throat center we express, this is what I stand for, and then suffer the consequences. You know, because you're always going to have the opposition. Okay. In just a few minutes I'm going to ask you if you have any questions or statements, okay? So anyway, he begins his public service, as we do, at the second initiation. And take a look at what happened to John the Baptist. Well, he did his job, but he met an unhappy end. So sometimes I wonder about the fate of the new group of world servers, you know, whether it's really a sacrificial group somehow. But we'll see at the end of the century whether we have our heads or not. I hope so. Okay. So the long silence occurred, and we too will grow into the fullness of our humanity. He says here, our manhood. We're not yet a rich young man. We are a young man. And I'm remembering Master DK saying, I was a young man and I did this wrong. I told my master that I was so devoted to him, and he says, you're devoted to yourself. And I protested and said, no, Master, I'm devoted to you. And I came crashing down to earth of my own weight, he said. So he shared a bit of history when he was a young man. See, this is the symbolic language, right? You're a babe, you're an infant, you're a little child, you're a young person, you're a rich young person, you know, I use a man person, whatever here, rich young person, then you're a fully mature person, a master, member of the hierarchy, fully. So you go through, then you become later what's called a past master. You know, in the Masonic Lodge, it's wonderful because the ones who were the master before, they sit back a little bit and they advise the new master on what could be done in various conditions. So one day you become a past master too. But mastership is about like the age, I don't know, 49 maybe, something like that, just before we get into the number 5. All right, so this initiation, and this is the hard one, on our emotional wreck of a planet. I mean, look, you know, I don't want to blame the planetary logos, okay? But he's having some emotional issues, and I'm wondering about his planetary psychiatrist. Anyway, he has some emotional issues with his astral body. He has a cosmic astral body, and it's turbulent. He hasn't taken the second initiation yet in a cosmic sense, okay? So, and he has some personality problems. That's what DK says, also very reverently, obviously, but according to the law of the analogy, our planet is just not sacred yet, and we're suffering here, and a lot of it is the astral body of our planetary logos. The astral body of our solar logos is in better shape because the solar logos is already a cosmic initiate of the second degree and is looking to become, like Sirius, a cosmic initiate of the third degree. He's looking to become a sacred solar logos, which he isn't yet, although he's a lot more sacred than our planetary logos. But the planetary logos is so high a being compared to us that we face that planetary logos at the 7th initiation. That's when that logos is the initiator. Before that it's Nakumara, and right before the 7th initiation is some being, some existence, which Master DK will not name. So when I joke here and I say the planetary logos is having emotional problems, maybe on a cosmic level, but it does affect us, and it makes our astral body the hardest to tame, especially if your soul is 2, 4, 6, or 1. 2, 4, 6, or 1. If you have a third ray soul or a fifth ray soul, it's not such a problem. Your problem is more towards the third initiation, where you have to overcome illusion. And there, the intuitive types are better at doing that than the 3s and the 5s. Okay, so complete control of the emotional nature and of all Piscean characteristics. By the end of this century, this is, what century is this? 21st century, the sign Pisces and its influence will have completely faded out. Now, is this going to make a difference when you try to have a complete control of Piscean factors? And I think it's going to make a big difference. It's a lot like the moon. Did you know, according to Master DK, the moon is getting smaller and smaller? It is basically in a period of disintegration. And by the time we finish with our 7 rounds in this scheme, maybe, whatever, the moon will have disappeared completely. So it's fading out, and things will be a lot easier on our planet for spiritual expression than they are now. Right now, we are fighting a hangover. You know, if you've ever had a hangover, it doesn't feel too good, and you're up in the morning, and you think you may not live through it, and it's all the result of what you did before. And we did things on the moon chain, and we did things on the previous solar system and so forth, which are hanging over. They are vestiges from the past. And they are our enemies because, you know, you make your bed, you lie in it. It doesn't go away until you remake the bed. So we have many things to straighten out through right action. Okay, so the 30 years that Jesus went through, they can be looked at as a period of spiritual unfoldment during the three divisions into which Aquarius will be divided. And this is very interesting because, you know, if you look at the sky, you'll see an interesting thing. A lot of constellations are quite distinct. There they are. They're separate from each other. Cancer doesn't overlap Leo. Cancer doesn't overlap Gemini. Gemini doesn't overlap Taurus. But Aquarius and Pisces overlap each other. They are not easy to separate. And isn't it interesting that the Christ, as the Bodhisattva, became Bodhisattva for 2 ages, a 5,000-year period instead of the usual 2,500-year period, because it's very much like Aquarius and Pisces are, you know, part of the same process. So he says, in this sign, the waters of the Piscean age will, symbolically speaking, be absorbed into the water pot carried on the shoulder of Aquarius in the symbol. And we will have that water of life and the life more abundantly. But the Christ is overlapping, and Pisces and Aquarius are overlapping, and it's like one long 5,000-year Pisces-Aquarius age, really. So even though we're getting rid of the influence of the sign Pisces, by the end of this century, it's still with us. What is the keynote of the second initiation? How am I doing on time, dear? I know I have 40 pages to go. It's not a problem, is it? Don't worry, I mean, I'm not going to really do that. Right. So 11:15 is when we, and then there's a break before that, right? Right, a break before. And then Andromeda, is that it?
Yeah, what?
Andromeda comes at 11:15.
No, 11:30.
Okay. I was just going to ask, when does the sea monster come? Lately there's been a lot of mythological films, you know. And there's poor Andromeda, and here's this horrible thing. And we're waiting for Perseus to come along with his sword and slay the sea monster. It's all...
Why you are telling, oh, be quiet now.
Oh, okay, I'll be quiet.
It is a secret.
Oh, this is a secret. I'm treading on the secrets of initiation here that are about to be revealed by my wife, okay? So anyway, the keynote is love of humanity. Okay, in the New Age... No, first of all, I'll stop. Do you have any questions up to this point? Any statements? Yeah, so Winnie, and I have to repeat your question because there's no...
Yeah, I'm quite interested about this group initiation.
Group initiation.
Talk a little bit more about what is required to be a group on
Yeah.
the way to take
Yeah.
initiation.
Well, it's not that every member of the group is even taking the same initiation, which is really interesting. But everybody is oriented towards the same purpose, and the energy that flows into the group will unify the group in its effectiveness, allow everybody to take the next initiation before them, and produce also a group initiate of a certain caliber. So we're told, you know, that some of the higher initiations are taken with very small groups or no groups at all, singly. But the earlier ones can be taken with a lot of people, and something sweeps over the group. If you look at the Pentecost thing that happened, that was a kind of group initiation, a kind of a second degree, a baptism by fire. Everybody experienced it. Maybe not everybody was a second degree initiate there. Maybe, you know, when I look at some of those around the Christ, they, you know, some of them were first degree initiates, it seems to me. Someone like Paul, who was supposed to be substituted for Judas, you know, as one of the disciples, he says, ended up taking the third degree. and maybe the fourth beyond that, but he was an advanced one. So something swept over everyone that was affiliated, and as a result, their whole point of tension as a group was elevated. So we have to get rid of all kinds of things. In Rule 11, our personal, strictly personal ties with the people in the group, and our desire nature changing with respect to the people in the group. We have to drop the need for recognition. We have to learn how to maintain occult silence, certain destructive things that liberate the group. And when we get rid of those eliminations and apply the force of destruction to the group process, then the group can really be an effective, integrated, initiatory instrument for carrying these things out. So look, in the old Mason, when I went into Masonry 50 years ago, it was really popular, but not as popular as it was even before, but it was still popular. And our lodge met every month, basically, and there were too many applicants. You couldn't have your own initiation. So we had to figure out a way to bring 3 people in there at the same time and split up our proficiency, as it's called. We had to prove that we knew enough to pass into the next degree, and we had to divide the responsibility among us. Well, that's an example of more than one going through the same process. It's a low example in comparison to the energy effect of many being overcome by the same stream of initiatory energy. But it doesn't mean, and DK says, that it's a hierarchy. Recognize the hierarchy in your groups, because if you didn't have a hierarchy in your groups, you couldn't reach as many people as effectively. I mean, you know what I mean? The hands and the feet cannot do what the heart does. The heart cannot do what the head does. You see what I mean? We need that division of labor, and within the the groups that are being initiated, we just can't have everybody all the same. But it doesn't mean that it's not an integrated, effective, initiated group of a certain caliber. We'll learn more about it as we go along. Right now, are there many even first-degree initiate groups? Are there many second-degree? I mean, the hierarchy, in a way, is a fifth-degree initiated group. And the group of Shohans that Sanat Kumara said, don't go away now, we have a lot of trouble on this planet, tell me what your decision is and stay here and help. So that's a 6th-degree initiated group. But, in our own groups, when we get together with disciples, and we have a conference, and we have classes, are we really an initiated group? See? It's a big, big step, even at our low level. Okay, so anyway, love of humanity, and this will mean the awakening of the heart center. Now, in Alice Bailey's life, she really did go from the preacher to the teacher. If you've read maybe some of her autobiography of autobiography, unfinished autobiography. I got mixed up there with Yogananda's book. But Alice Bailey has the unfinished autobiography. Really interesting if you haven't been in it. And if you have been in it, you know it's really interesting. Anyway, in the First World War, wherever she was a fire and brimstone preacher until one of the army people said, Missy, he said in those days, things would go a lot better if you weren't thumping that Bible so much. And, she became a great teacher. But there's the idea of the transition from the 6th ray to the 2nd, from the solar plexus to the heart. See? And it even affected her. I think she was recapitulating the 2nd initiation, and in my view anyway, she ended up a life as a 3rd-degree initiate. Very strong on the hierarchical representation, really giving the teaching out as a world disciple, a true 3rd degree. That's my impression. So anyway, in the past, so the heart center is going to wake up. In the past and up until the last few years, the keynote has been service, which is very important, sometimes even more important than meditation, he says. Imagine, you can accomplish more through service than through meditation. Anyway, the keynote has been service because, if selflessly rendered, it embodied a technique which automatically brought the heart center into activity. Now, you probably have had experience with that. When you're really serving, when you're really helping, we know how the heart center experiences such things. A selflessness. The heart center responds to selflessness. And when you're in the presence of a real sacrifice, it hits the heart center. You know, I think about that guy. He was bringing the oxygen to the kids in the cave, and he was the one fatality, right? You know, just a very strong man doing all that kind of thing, and he was selflessly bringing life, which is oxygen, to those children trapped in the cave, and he died. An act of service. See what I mean? And people have been inspired by the example of Jesus all these years when they think about his life, and they forget themselves and they get lifted up, you know, by the example of sacrifice. When I'm in the presence of real sacrifice, I can hardly stand it. It's so effective. It just melts me, you know. When I see there's nothing more touching than sacrifice, when you really, not some kind of self-conscious thing where you want to be noticed because you pay some money and it looks like a sacrifice. The real thing, and it just gets you, you know. Probably you have that experience. I would guess. So, service in the heart were the keynotes until recently. It is love. Now this is so important, and if we read nothing else, this would be the key. It is love of humanity, which is the major lack in the character of many disciples today. Now just imagine, it's the first requirement for the first initiation. Love humanity. The major lack in the character of many disciples today. Now let's compare ourselves. They love those with whom they may be associated, or they love the work connected with the group endeavor, or they love their own nation. They may also love an ideal or a theoretical assumption, but they do not really love humanity as a whole. Now, you know what I mean? I don't know if you'll agree with me, but the world is filled with irritating people. And as a result, it gets a little hard to love everyone. Of course, I'm not one of them, right? And neither are you, but, you know, the world is filled with irritating people. And then how do you love those people that just rub you the wrong way? So somehow, you know, how do you do that? Christ says, love your enemy. Master Mori at least had an enemies list. You know, he said to his chancellor, let's see if any worthy name has come on the list. So that's a step in that direction. At least it's respect, you know. So anyway, we do not really love humanity as a whole. And sometimes you really have to work on that and how it is accomplished. Sometimes I go out in the crowd and I say, I don't know your history, but you're the same emanation as I am, you know. And I try to get beyond like and dislike. The very first thing is like and dislike. It's called sentiment. And that's the very first elimination in group work. Yeah, to you.
Yes, I think this way, that it's easier to love humanity. This, suffering humanity, people who are struggling everywhere, who are fighting for their children, trying to get food, going waking up early in the morning, going to work, or their work is in huge distances, and not having much.
Yeah.
But I have problems in that when people have, and then they are just lazy and want to have their own comfort. In that part, I have really problems.
It's the physical heads of the Hydra.
Exactly.
The protest. Hey, welfare gave me everything I needed. Now you want me to show up one day a week and work somewhere? It's not right. You know what I mean? So the inertia, the Taurus part, you know, we all have the negativity, like Aries running into walls and Taurus gets lazy, and so forth. That part of inertia has got to be stirred up and moved, because people fall into it and they say, it's my right to be lazy. It's my right to do nothing. The world owes me a living. You know the old saying, right? So obviously, if we have seventh ray vehicles and the seventh ray comes in more and more, that inertia factor is going to be much reduced in the Aquarian age. He says better health is coming for everybody because the etheric body is going to be much more responsive to the energy currents, and we're going to have more energy. So maybe we can overcome that. But this right to be served and not have to work, now that's against the whole setup. Saturn is the planet of work. It's the mental body, Mars the emotional body, and Earth the physical body of a great third ray entity. Probably it's the Holy Ghost or something like that. There is a great entity here. I'll show you if I can get here. Yeah. See these three triangles. Each one of those triangles on the logoic plane expresses itself through three planets, with kind of leaving Mercury to run around in between them. And the green one expresses itself through Saturn, Mars, and the Earth, with Saturn as the mental body, Mars as the emotional body, and Earth as the physical body. So Saturn is anything but inertia. Just get in there and do the job, you know. And we have to, if we're just going to lie around and not stir the heavy matter in our nature, we're going to fail in our purpose. The next triangle is Uranus, Jupiter, and Venus. And whatever the next triangle is, I'm just guessing, I think it's Vulcan, Pluto, and Neptune. With Mercury doing the communication between the 10, you know. That would be 10, 9, and 10. All right, so let's see where we are here. I think we're running out of time. But we've done 3 pages of 40, so that's a significant inroad into this compilation. And let's see, you're going to start at 11:30, right, Tuya?
Yeah, I tried. Really.
Yeah, we have a little more time, just a little more time. Then we'll take a little break and eat things that will make us sleepy. Okay. It's important, you know, to realize. I wonder if sugar and the downfall of nations goes together. I know it had a very bad effect, the importation of sugar on England back in the old days. Maybe that's when dentistry was invented. I don't know. Everybody's teeth turned black, you know, and they didn't know. They didn't know any difference. It's like 100 years ago, you see these nicely dressed women at their job handling radium with their bare hands. You know, moving the radium pieces or metals that are radium or just filled with radium. Obviously, they died. You know what I mean? Nikkei says many deaths will arise because of improper relationship with the Deva kingdom. And this, these are the low Devas. All right, so there are limits to our capacity to love, their capacity to love, and it is the transcending of those limits which constitute their problem, our main problem at this time. The transcending of the inability to love. Now think about that. It's just so straightforward. We study all of this complex esotericism, and there's some amazing things about it, and it's very simple. We're trying to move from mind to love without dropping mind. It's a Venus thing. Loving mind, or the mind that as it is in Christ. So, they have to learn. Do you remember the Christmas Carol when Scrooge has been told, he's sitting in his room after not having let his clerk go home for Christmas Eve at the right time, and he hears chains dragging on the stairway up to his apartment. And it turns out to be Jacob Marley, who was a financial person just like Scrooge, and kind of mean, and now he's a ghost. And he says, humanity was my business. Because Scrooge says to him, you were always a good businessman, Marley. And he answers immediately, humanity was my business. And I ignored that, see. It's one of the great classics. If you ever want to see what the first initiation is like, in really embodied, just look at Scrooge in the Christmas Carol. Okay, so they have to learn that it is humanity which calls for their allegiance, their loyalty and service, not just their friends and the people they like, because like is all about sentiment. I like you, I don't like you. That's the very first thing that has to be eliminated from group work. Just go to page 11, rule 11, and that whole preamble about what you have to get rid of in order to do real group work, and sentiment is the first thing to go. I would have you all ponder deeply on the above statements, for they embody the task ahead of you as you seek to fit yourselves for the first or the second initiation. So there was only one that had not taken the first initiation, but he included him. He says, thus far you have failed to stand before the Christ. But, it was coming, and you could see that in another couple of lives he would have a second-rate personality, and everything would be much smoother, and he would stand before the Christ. So, we forget these things in our brain consciousness. I would say the great majority of students in Master DK's group have stood before the Christ at least once. I would say that. Now, maybe there's quite a few who think proudly that that's old stuff, and maybe they haven't at all. But I would say a lot of people in our field, because we're so motivated for the higher life, we have the effect of standing before the first initiator. Well, I think that the smart thing to do now is simply, do you have any questions or thoughts? We've been talking a lot about the energy of love, solar plexus to the heart, sacral to the throat, speed, the voice of the silence, entering the stream, the ashram having an effect. We've been talking about all those good things. Yeah, Catherine, yeah.
You mentioned that awareness relates to number
Okay, now I'm going to have, I'm sorry, my hearing is,
You mentioned 24 was the number.
oh, 24, yes, 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 yes.
Is that because of the Shambhala, or is there another?
That is the number of Shambhala, and it's kind of the rays of our solar logos at this particular time. And it is a number on which we base a lot of time measurements, including the 24 hours of the day, and it sums to, there's 24 students in the advanced schools. Reverse it and you get 42, which is another very important number, having to do with the strength that it requires to really become fully realized. But basically it's a 6. 24 is a 6. And the number of 2 plus 4 is a 6. And the number of Shambhala is not only a 24, but a 6. It represents the completeness of one rotation of the Earth on its axis, the number 24. So it's a 1 in a way. There are probably other reasons why 24 is the Shambhalic number. It has to do with our solar logos and so forth. Some of them I don't know, but he gives it to us as that number, and the number 6 being very important, representing the cube of space. See, if you really look at the cube of space, it is standing for 6. So one day, maybe some of us will be in the advanced schools, having fulfilled our proper requirement in the university-like preparatory schools, and we will be there in the presence of 3 very high teachers. Teachers by example, it will mean 27, which is exactly the number that will be found in the 10th C group, or those groups that there's a completeness about it. 2 and 7 are 9, and you take 3 from each of the earlier C groups, and you make up the personnel of the 10th C group. 3 times 9 is 27. That's what will be in those groups that imitate or attempt to express the 10th C group. And then when you add it all together, because you're allowed to do that, you get all the parts and pieces, then you add the whole thing, one more number, you get 28, which is the number of the Om. Om sums to 28. So 16 plus, what is it, 12, is that what it is? Something like that. Anyway, the Om is the 28, it's the 1. So it's 6 and a 4, it's a 10, it's a 1.
So it's because Capricorn is also can be considered number 28.
Yes, because of the stars in Capricorn.
The stars. So
Yeah, it's a
so
1.
the Om. I was just thinking the relationship of Capricorn and Om, because in one sense we can say that it is the soul note or soul sound, and because Capricorn opens the way to hierarchy.
Right.
Which can be said like the second aspect of divinity is hierarchy, the soul aspect of divinity.
Yeah.
So very interesting.
15 and 13, is that how it goes? Is the M the 13th letter with the N as the 14th letter? Because M is a 4. So I think it's 13. I mean, L is 12. L, what comes after L? LM. it's 13. It's 13 plus 15 is 28.
By the way, about this initiatory or initiation process and letter L is interesting. It is it consists some very deep mysteries about how the initiation process goes. That in these 2 initiations of the threshold, the first and the second, we are on the ground, we are on the horizontal level. But then we are lifted into the vertical level, which is about the 4th degree, is the real this upright position. But then the 3rd degree is that level where the Osiris is rising, this 45.
Yeah.
45 angle.
Yes,
they're
that's
very
very interesting. 45-degree angle.
Yes,
And not quite the 4th degree,
of the
which
90.
would be upright.
Yeah.
The Egyptians, I mean, I never appreciated what Egypt had until I met Tuya. You must have a lot of background there, and it's just amazing what they were able to capture. They're a very Syrian civilization, you might say.
And when we think about this old temple of Ibis, what is like the first outpost of the hierarchy and the first outpost of the teaching. And from there, the teaching was spread all around the world. Tibetan says that all those traditions which have still connection to the sun are connected to this, the first teaching of hierarchy.
Yeah.
And that is what has made me also be very interested about our Kalevalan tradition, because the sun is the key thing. All the wizards were trying to go to the north, where was the world axis in the form of the great oak. And that is that the world axis is about how the earth is pointed out to the northern star. But that land where they were aiming to was called the land of the eternal sun. And they were worshipping always the sun.
Somehow it's very Hyperborean, you know, in a way. The north here. Of course, some of you have seen the world axis at Santa Claus's home in Rovaniemi.
Right.
You may remember it's made of wood and it's very big.
But I was still saying about this, that how the when you think about Egypt and how important the 4th ray is for Egypt, so it was like that culture was picturizing all the old ancient truths. And that's why when you study about their iconography, it is just revealing all the time those secrets.
Well, all right, the mysteries are the mysteries, and they are ongoing, and they are as deep can be, and we are not going to remain like little water bugs who are skittering along the top of the water. You know how it is. There's so much surface tension, the bug doesn't sink, but it doesn't go very deep either. So beyond water buggery, we move, and we'll take a 15-minute break, everybody, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about Venus and Andromeda and other things that are related to the soul. Okay, and I'm really trying here with this new platform on YouTube to try to get it right. Occasionally, you're going to see the wrong title for what's going on the video, but just live with it. Anyway, what's going on in the class is more important than the title. We'll see you a little later, and ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Do you have yours?